Good morning, everybody. For history today, we are going to be learning about the first of the colonies to get to, which is the colony of Virginia. So, on Friday, you did your little map. We are going to be focusing on Virginia right here, one of these southern colonies. And we're going to start chapter 2 in your history readers. We're going to have quite a bit of it that follows like the story of someone. It's historical fiction, so it's not true, but what a little boy could have had as his life living in these original colonies in America. So I'm going to present to the book. You can follow along. Okay, chapter 2. Starting the Virginia colony. Now, an ocean apart, we're going to be thinking of as our big question, what challenges did the colonists in Jamestown face? Okay, so be thinking about that. What were some of the challenges that they faced? Now, it was September in the year 1607, and Hannah was not happy at all. This is not true. This is the just story that we're going to be reading. She was trying to read a new book, but it was too difficult for her. If Thomas were home here in London, he would have helped her. But Thomas had gone away last year when she was 7 to a place called Virginia. Hannah often thought about Thomas. Sometimes she worried about him because he had set off on a dangerous voyage across the giant ocean. Thomas was Hannah's uncle, her father's younger brother. But he had always lived with her family in London, and Hannah thought of him as her big brother, kind of. Thomas was 18 years old, and Hannah was 8. She missed Thomas. This picture shows in 1607 ships carrying the first English settlers, along with such as Hannah's Uncle Thomas, to North America. Now, Hannah, come quickly. We have a letter from Thomas. Mother was very excited. Hannah raced into the parlor. She laughed and jumped up and down before falling into a chair. What does Thomas say? Oh, read it, please, Mother. Read it to me, please. Hannah's mother unfolded the letter. She laughed. She looked so happy. She had worried about Thomas, too. His letter is dated June 1607. That was more than 3 months ago. Virginia certainly is far away, Hannah's mother said. Thomas began his letter. To my family. 6 months ago, our 3 ships, the Discovery, the Godspeed, and the Susan Constant, sailed from England. We men of the Virginia Company of London were eager to sail. We thought the adventure in Virginia would make us rich. We were at sea 4 long months before we saw land again. Can you imagine being at sea for 4 months, never seeing land? During those months, we grew very tired of sailing and of each other. One man argued with Mr. Edward Wingfield, a very important man aboard the ship. The poor fellow was then locked in chains for the rest of the voyage. I became friends with that man, and he has proved to be a most unusual fellow. We finally reached the Chesapeake Bay in April. That's when I saw Virginia for the first time. It is a beautiful land with great forests and green fields. The water in the bay is clear and deep and filled with fish. This is possibly what it would have looked like as they were coming on very close to North America, coming close to Virginia, and spotting land for the first time in 4 months. What a relief I'm sure they felt. Now we put ashore at a point we called Cape Henry, named for the King of England's oldest son. Shortly afterward, Captain Newport of the Susan Constant brought out a sea chest. Instructions from the Virginia Company had been locked in there since we left England. We were to follow the instructions. First, we were to sail up a deep river and find a place for settlement. Then we were to build a fort to protect us from attack. The instructions included the names of seven men who were to make rules for the colony. They would be called the council. Now, council is a group of people who meet to help run a government. Okay? We still have like councilmen who meet together, and councilwomen to help run a government. That's something we still have today. Now, 6 of those names were no surprise to us at all, for they were important gentlemen or ship captains. Now, a gentleman on the ship would be someone who came from a high position in society. They probably had a lot of money. They were landowners. They were not a laborer, not like a blacksmith or something. Now, but one name was a great surprise to everyone. John Smith. Now, Smith means he was like a laborer. He was not a fancy gentleman who just owned land. He was a worker. That last name Smith tells you that. He was not a rich gentleman. He was the man who had been locked in chains below deck, my new friend. Now, the 6 gentlemen who were named to the council would not accept John Smith as an equal. They would not let him on the council, but they did take off his chains. So he is supposed to be one of the top 7, but they're not allowing it. Now, John Smith was real on the ship. The story of Thomas is historical fiction, but this part is leading into some real history, including Virginia Company. Now, we followed the Virginia Company's instructions. We sailed up a clear, deep river, which we named the James River, after the king. So King James was King of England at this time. About 60 miles upriver, we came upon a place that all the gentlemen thought would be just right for our settlement. This place would be safe and unnoticed by our enemy, the Spanish. So that's what they mainly wanted protection from the Spanish, because Spain and England were not in like actual battle at the time, but they were enemies at the time. Now, we named the place Jamestown once again in honor of King James. We were all very happy to get off the ships and onto land, but trouble began almost at once. Our first task was to build a fort to protect us from Native Americans and the Spanish. And remember that the Spanish were some of these explorers who were coming up into North America. So they could likely be in the same area, same land. Now, most of us had never built anything before. Many of the gentlemen had never worked a day in their lives. These are fancy gentlemen who are well educated, but they don't know how to build and construct. And they did not want to work now. What they really wanted was for someone else to do the work while they looked for gold. That's their goal. They want to look for gold and become even richer. They're already rich, but they want to become richer, and they're not thinking about protection, which they need to think about. They need to think, how can we live and survive, and then we can focus on getting wealthy. But John Smith knew a lot about building. He showed me how to chop down trees and carve them into thick posts. He also showed me how to bury the lower parts of the posts into the ground close together so that they could stand up straight. These posts became a strong wall called the palisade that protected the fort. So a palisade is a fence made from wooden or metal stakes driven into the ground. Now, John Smith took me to the river each day to fish. Sometimes the other gentlemen joined us, but they rarely caught anything. Smith almost always caught fish for us to eat. I watched him carefully and did what he did. Soon, I was able to catch fish too. Smith also taught me how to find other foods. I learned where to look for berries and nuts. Native Americans watched us as we worked. Now, after a few weeks of hard work, the fort was partly finished. But then the council decided to send Captain Newport and John Smith to explore farther up the James River. I wanted to go too. I wanted to see more of the land. All of this is true other than the Thomas part. So there's not a real person named Thomas who they're talking about. Now, John Smith did not want to explore the James River. He did not want anyone else to explore it either. He thought we should finish the fort first. He thinks we should not start exploring until we have a good way of protecting ourselves. Many of the gentlemen were angry because they had not found any gold. They did very little except eat, sleep, and argue. So Smith became angry. He said it was very important to prepare for the coming winter, like the wilders do, right? As they do all of the harvesting to prepare for winter. The council did not listen to Smith, though. They ordered us to explore the river instead. Now, trouble at the fort. We did as we were told and left to explore the river. We traveled up the river for several days. Those were the instructions. Now, eventually, we came to a place where the water ran over huge rocks that could destroy our boat. We had to return to Jamestown. When we got back, we heard bad news. While we were gone, there had been a conflict between the men left behind and Native Americans. 2 of our men, of the English, were killed. 10 more were wounded. The fort had also been damaged. John Smith had been right. What had he been right about? They needed to focus on finishing the fort before they left. They could wait on finding that gold, but they've got to have protection first. And the council had been wrong. Now, the council was ready to listen to John Smith. He told the men to get to work and rebuild the fort. I'm happy to say that we finished the fort a few days ago. Captain Smith, as everyone calls him now, took his seat on the council. The ship that will carry our letters home to England is about to sail. If the ship does not sink on the way and you get this letter, please write back to me. I will write again when the next ship sails. Your loving Thomas. And here they are, listening to Captain Smith, head of his group, as they begin building their fort, or continue building the fort. So that's all for today. Chapter 3 is going to continue with Captain John Smith, though, so we're going to hear more about his story. And tomorrow, we'll have a little bit of a break from the history reader, because we'll actually read a story of the world telling of Jamestown. And let's see. So what were some of the challenges that they faced in Jamestown? Yeah, people attacking them. They had to be prepared for attacks from the Spanish and from Native Americans. Also, they didn't know the land much, and they had to prepare for winter. Also, all those gentlemen, they didn't know how to build things well, and they were not listening to John Smith, who actually could advise them properly. So quite a few challenges. They were trying to just follow the instructions that they were given, and they at least changed their mind and started to follow Captain John Smith once they realized that they should focus on just protection at first. So you'll also have an assignment posted on Bright Thinker to write a diary entry, kind of like what we just heard with that letter. Imagine that you lived in Jamestown. What would your life be like based off of what we've just heard? What might be some things that you saw or that you would do? Okay, that is all for today's lesson. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.